Every morning, a little boy dragged heavy wood across the dirt road, barefoot, bruised, and silent. His stepmother stood at the door, watching, as if his pain was proof of obedience. No one ever stopped. No one ever cared. Until one afternoon, a black car pulled over. The door opened, and a man stepped out. A millionaire, with eyes that had seen too much of the world's cruelty. He watched the boy stumble under the weight, then said one word that changed everything. Stop. What happened next wasn't charity. It was justice, quiet, powerful, and long overdue. People talk about miracles like they happen in churches, but sometimes they happen on dusty roads, under a burning sun, when someone finally decides to see. Stay until the end, because this story might remind you that kindness still exists, and help you sleep peacefully tonight. The sun hadn't yet broken the horizon when Noah stumbled through the frost-covered path leading into the forest. His breath came out in pale clouds, the cold gnawing at his bones. His jacket, 2 sizes too big, torn at the sleeve, did little to protect him. On his back, a rope dug into his shoulder blades, holding the bundle of wet firewood that seemed to grow heavier with every passing step. Behind him, the small cottage where he lived with his stepmother, Clara, shrank into a silhouette. Dark, lonely, and indifferent. Noah didn't remember the last time anyone called his name with warmth. Clara had taken that from him after his father died 2 winters ago. She would say his name only to command, never to care. Move faster, she would bark from the doorway. You eat because I let you. Don't make me regret it. He had learned not to answer. Words had consequences. The forest, though cruel in its coldness, was the only place that offered silence. Silence that didn't judge or demand. The crunch of snow under his bare boots was the rhythm of his survival. As Noah reached the edge of the clearing, he paused to catch his breath. The first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, painting the frost in gold. For a moment, he felt something warm stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, maybe. But then a sharp voice shattered the quiet. Where are you, boy? Clara's tone carried across the field, slicing through the morning calm. Noah flinched. He knew what came next if she found him idling. He bent down, gathering more wood, his small hands trembling as splinters cut his skin. He whispered to himself, just a little more, just enough for today. The forest answered with silence. By noon, the snow had begun to fall again, thick, soft flakes drifting down like feathers. Noah's arms ached. His breath was shallow. He had filled his bundle to the brim, yet still he felt it wasn't enough. It was never enough for Clara. He turned toward the dirt road that led back to the cottage. A low rumble of an engine broke the stillness. Startled, Noah looked up to see something he'd never seen before on this path. A sleek black car, its tires crunching over the frost. It slowed as it neared him. Inside, behind tinted glass, sat a man in a dark coat. The car stopped completely beside the boy. The driver's door opened, and the man stepped out. A tall figure, elegant but weary, his eyes reflecting both authority and compassion. Noah froze. His instinct told him to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The man crouched down, his voice low. Calm. Hey there, son. Why are you out here alone with all that wood? Noah said nothing. He lowered his gaze, clutching the bundle tighter, as if it were his only protection. The man glanced at the rope cutting into the boy's skin, then at the bruises fading along his wrists. His jaw tightened. Where's your family? Noah hesitated. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He swallowed hard, the words catching in his throat. Finally, he whispered, At home. Waiting. The man's eyes softened. And you? What are you waiting for? Noah didn't answer. A gust of wind swept between them, lifting the snow into tiny whirlwinds. The man reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a pair of leather gloves. He handed them toward Noah. "Here, put these on. You'll freeze like this." Noah stared at the gloves. No one had ever offered him warmth before. Not like this. But he hesitated, afraid it might be a trick. "It's okay," the man said gently. "They're just gloves." After a long pause, Noah reached out with shaking fingers and took them. They were soft, warm, far too large for his hands. But they felt like a miracle. The man smiled faintly. "My name's Adrian." Noah's voice was barely a whisper. "Noah." Adrian nodded. "Noah. That's a strong name." For the first time in months, the boy almost smiled. But just as quickly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the distance. Sharp, hurried, coming from the direction of the cottage. Adrian turned his head toward the noise. "Who's that?" Noah's eyes widened with fear. His hands trembled, the rope slipping from his shoulder. The bundle of wood fell into the snow with a heavy thud. He whispered, voice trembling, "She's coming." The man frowned. "Who?" Before Noah could answer, a woman's voice tore through the air, shrill and furious. "Noah, what are you doing with that man?" Adrian straightened slowly, sensing the tension rising like the storm clouds gathering above. The wind howled through the trees. The snow began to fall harder, almost blinding. Noah's breath quickened. His heart pounded against his ribs as he looked between Adrian and the approaching figure. Something deep inside him, something he'd buried for too long, rose to the surface. A memory. His father's voice, soft and distant. "When you're lost, follow the light, son." He looked up at the sky, where a faint glimmer of sunlight pierced through the storm. And then, from behind him, a sound, the crunch of a boot too close, too sudden. A shadow fell across the snow. The gloves Adrian had given him slipped from his hands, landing softly in the frost. The moment froze in silence. Then Noah whispered, barely audible, "Please, don't let her take me back." Adrian froze at the sound of that trembling plea. "Please, don't let her take me back." The words were quiet, fragile, but they hit him like thunder. He turned toward the small figure beside him. Noah's face pale and wet from melting snow, his eyes wide with terror that no child should ever know. The woman's footsteps grew louder. Clara appeared at the bend of the path, her coat wrapped tightly around her, her eyes sharp as broken glass. She moved fast, her boots crunching into the ice. "There you are!" she snapped, her voice slicing through the wind. "I told you to bring the wood back an hour ago. What are you doing talking to strangers?" Adrian straightened, his tall frame casting a shadow between the woman and the boy. "I found him out here carrying more than he should. The weather's turning dangerous." Clara's lips tightened. "He's fine. He does this every day. Builds character." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "He's a child, not a laborer." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Snowflakes landed on Adrian's black coat, melting instantly. Clara crossed her arms and let out a dry laugh. "You rich people think you can just walk into other people's lives and fix them," she said bitterly. "You don't know anything about us." "Maybe not," Adrian replied calmly. "But I know what fear looks like." His gaze shifted to Noah, who stood behind him clutching the gloves. Adrian noticed how the boy flinched whenever Clara spoke, how his shoulders tensed as if expecting a blow. Something inside Adrian, something he thought he'd buried years ago, stirred. He remembered another winter, another child. His own. For a moment he saw his son, Michael, standing by a frozen lake, laughing as snow fell around them. Then the laughter turned to silence, replaced by the memory of flashing ambulance lights and the sound of his wife's scream. Adrian's jaw clenched. He blinked the memory away and focused on the present, on Noah, on the woman who called herself his mother, and the quiet desperation in the boy's eyes. "I think you should let him rest for a moment," Adrian said firmly. Clara stepped closer, anger flashing in her eyes. "And who exactly do you think you are to tell me how to raise my child?" Adrian met her glare without flinching. "Someone who can see when a child is being hurt." For a second, Clara's face went pale. Then she laughed, high and cold. "You don't know what you're talking about. He's lazy, useless, always whining. I'm the only one who keeps a roof over his head." Noah's lips moved silently. Adrian leaned down slightly, hearing a whisper. She burns my drawings when I don't finish fast enough." Adrian's fists clenched. "That's enough." Clara's eyes widened as Adrian took a step forward, his voice low but steady. "You don't have the right to break him just because you're broken yourself." Her face twisted. "Mind your own business." "I am," Adrian said, "because you just made it mine." A gust of wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the distant sound of thunder. The temperature dropped sharply, the sky turning gray. The snowstorm was rolling in faster than expected. Clara glared at them both. "You don't know what you're getting into." Adrian's tone turned ice cold. "Maybe not, but I know this. He's not going back with you right now." Noah looked up, his eyes filling with tears he didn't dare let fall. For a brief moment, Clara hesitated. Then her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Fine," she said sweetly. "If you care that much, keep him. You'll see what a burden he is." She turned sharply, her boots digging into the snow as she stormed away toward the cottage, her figure disappearing into the blinding white. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Noah stood frozen, staring after her until she was gone. Then his knees buckled, and the bundle of wood slipped from his grasp again. Adrian caught him before he fell. "Easy, son. You're all right now." But Noah shook his head violently. "She'll come back. She always does. She says no one wants me. She says I belong to her." Adrian knelt in the snow, eye level with the boy. "Listen to me," he said softly. "You belong to no one who hurts you. Do you understand?" The boy didn't answer, but the look in his eyes wavered between disbelief and desperate hope. Adrian sighed, standing up. "Come on, let's get you warm." He led Noah to the car and opened the back door. The interior glowed softly with the warmth of the heater. As the boy hesitated, Adrian said gently, "It's okay. You can trust me." Noah climbed in slowly, clutching the gloves to his chest like a talisman. As Adrian got into the driver's seat, the storm began to thicken. Snow swirled furiously around them, reducing visibility to almost nothing. He turned on the headlights, illuminating the white chaos ahead. For a few minutes, they drove in silence. Noah watched the snowflakes race past the window, his reflection flickering in the glass. Adrian glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "Do you have anyone else? Relatives? Friends?" Noah shook his head. "Just her, and she said, 'People forget me easily.'" Adrian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Not everyone forgets." Noah turned toward him, his small voice trembling. "Why did you stop for me?" Adrian exhaled slowly. "Because once, I didn't stop when I should have." The boy frowned, not understanding. Adrian didn't explain further. Some memories were too heavy to share. As they reached the main road, the snowstorm grew fierce. The car rocked slightly under the force of the wind. Lightning flickered faintly on the horizon. Adrian slowed down, scanning the road ahead. Suddenly, Noah spoke again, barely a whisper, but enough to make Adrian's blood run cold. "She's watching." Adrian's eyes darted to the rearview mirror. Through the blizzard, a dark figure stood on the edge of the forest, barely visible, motionless, but unmistakably there. Clara. her outline blurred by the snow, her face hidden by the storm, but Adrian could feel her gaze. Noah pressed closer to the seat, whispering, "She said she'd find me, even if I ran." Adrian started the engine harder, determination flaring in his chest. "Not this time," he said, his voice firm, almost like a vow. He drove into the storm. And behind them, the last glimpse of Clara faded into the white, her shadow vanishing like smoke. But the echo of her voice lingered in the boy's mind. "You'll never be free, Noah." The wind roared, and somewhere deep in the storm, something unseen cracked, as if fate itself had just been challenged. The storm raged all night. By the time Adrian's car turned into the long, snow-covered driveway of his estate, the world outside had vanished into white. The iron gates creaked open, revealing a sprawling mansion of stone and glass, silent, grand, and lonely against the mountainside. Noah pressed his face against the window, wide-eyed. He had never seen a house so big. The lights glowing inside looked like tiny suns compared to the dim shadows he had always known. But behind that awe was something else. Hesitation. The boy's instincts whispered that places like this belonged to people who never looked twice at someone like him. Adrian noticed his stillness. "Don't worry," he said softly. "It's just a house. The warmth's inside, not in the walls." Noah nodded slightly, but didn't speak. When Adrian opened the door, a rush of heat and scent, pine wood and cinnamon, met them. The marble floor reflected the firelight from a grand hearth. Every sound echoed faintly in the vastness. To Noah, it felt like stepping into another world, one that might disappear if he breathed too loudly. A woman's voice broke the quiet. "Sir, you're home early." It was Maria, Adrian's longtime housekeeper. She was in her 50s, kind-faced but with the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen enough of life's storms. She froze when she saw Noah standing behind Adrian, shivering, his hair damp and his shoes soaked through. "Oh, dear Lord," she murmured, rushing over. "This child's freezing." "Get him some dry clothes," Adrian said, hanging up his coat, "and something warm to eat." Maria nodded and knelt before Noah. "Come, sweetheart. You're safe here." Noah hesitated, glancing at Adrian as if asking permission. Adrian gave a small nod. "Go on. She'll take care of you." As Maria led him up the stairs, Adrian lingered in the entryway, his eyes following the boy. A heavy ache settled in his chest. A familiar one. It had been years since a child's footsteps echoed in this house. He walked to the large window overlooking the storm. The reflection staring back at him was weary. A man who once built empires, but couldn't save his own family. The snow outside blurred the world into silence, and for a moment, Adrian wondered if fate had sent this boy as a cruel reminder, or as a chance to make peace with the past. Upstairs, Maria handed Noah a thick wool sweater and a pair of soft slippers. "You'll catch your death in those rags," she muttered gently, helping him out of his soaked jacket. "How old are you, dear?" 10, Noah said quietly. Maria's expression softened. 10? You're just a baby." Noah looked at her uncertainly. "She says I'm old enough to work." Maria paused, her heart twisting. She cupped his cheek for a moment. "You're old enough to dream, that's what you are. Now, come along, I've got soup waiting." Downstairs, the fireplace crackled as the storm howled outside. Noah sat at the long dining table, a bowl of steaming soup before him. He ate slowly, unsure if it was a dream. Each spoonful burned his throat, thawing a little piece of the cold that had lived inside him for years. Adrian watched quietly from across the table, a glass of water untouched in his hand. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy with unspoken things neither knew how to name. After a while, Noah looked up. "Why are you being nice to me?" Adrian set down the glass. "Because you deserve it." Noah frowned. "She said people only help if they want something back." Adrian's eyes dimmed. "Then she's wrong." The boy's gaze dropped to the table. His fingers played with the edge of the napkin. "Will she come for me?" Adrian hesitated. "Do you think she will?" Noah nodded slowly. "She said she always does." The room seemed to grow quieter, as if even the fire held its breath. Adrian leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. "Then we'll be ready." For the first time, a spark flickered in Noah's eyes, the smallest glint of trust. Later that night, Noah lay in a soft bed that felt too big, too warm. The ceiling above was painted with faint stars that glowed when the lights dimmed. He stared at them for a long time, afraid to close his eyes. From downstairs, he heard faint piano notes. Soft, hesitant. Adrian was playing. Noah slipped out of bed and followed the sound down the hall. He stopped at the doorway of the music room. Adrian sat at the grand piano, his fingers moving slowly across the keys. The melody was sad, almost broken, like a memory trying to find its way home. Noah stood there silently, listening. When Adrian noticed him, he smiled faintly. "Can't sleep?" Noah shook his head. "It's too quiet." Adrian nodded. "Silence can be loud when you're not used to it." The boy stepped closer. "You play nice." "Thank you," Adrian said softly. "My son used to sit there." He pointed to the bench beside him and pressed the wrong notes just to make me laugh. Noah looked at the empty spot. "Where is he now?" Adrian's hands froze on the keys. The silence that followed said more than any words could. After a moment, Adrian whispered, "He's gone." Noah didn't know what to say. He simply walked to the bench and sat beside him. Together they stared at the ivory keys, two lost souls bound by a silence that somehow understood them both. Adrian placed his hand gently over Noah's. "Would you like to learn?" The boy's eyes widened. "Me? Play the piano?" Adrian smiled softly. "Yes. Why not?" "I might mess up," Noah murmured. "That's how music begins," Adrian replied. He pressed Noah's fingers on a few notes. The sound was clumsy, uneven, but in that imperfect melody, something alive stirred in the room. For a brief moment, the house, once haunted by sorrow, felt warm again. Outside, the storm began to ease. The wind calmed, and the first stars reappeared above the snow. But just as the peace settled in, Noah's eyes caught a faint movement through the window, a shadow passing by the gates. He froze. "Adrian," he whispered. The man looked up. "What is it?" Noah's voice trembled. "She's here." Adrian turned toward the window. Through the glass, under the dim light of the gate lantern, a dark silhouette stood motionless, just beyond the iron bars. The shape didn't move, but even from afar, Adrian could feel the chill of her stare. Clara had found them. Snow still drifted lazily through the air, but the storm had quieted into an eerie calm, the kind that comes before something worse. Adrian stood by the window, every muscle in his body taut as he watched the lone shadow at the gates. The security lights flickered against the iron bars, and there, half obscured by snow, stood Clara. Her coat clung to her frame, her hair wild from the wind. But it wasn't the cold that made her look frightening. It was the smile. The kind of smile people wear when they believe they've already won. Noah clutched the edge of the piano bench, his breath quick and shallow. "She found me," he whispered, voice breaking. "I told you she would." Adrian placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "You're safe here," he said firmly, though a flicker of unease passed through his eyes. "She can't come in without my permission. But she always finds a way." Noah murmured. Adrian turned from the window. Then, "We'll stop her this time." He walked to the wall panel and pressed a small button. The screen beside it came alive, showing the front gate camera feed. Clara stood motionless in the snow, staring straight into the lens as if she knew exactly where to look. Maria's voice echoed from the doorway behind them. "Sir, is that—" "Yes," Adrian said without turning. "Keep Noah upstairs. I'll handle this." Maria hesitated. "She looks unwell." Adrian's jaw tightened. "So do wolves when they haven't eaten." Outside, the gate creaked open as Adrian stepped into the biting cold. The air was sharp and still. Only the soft crunch of his boots on the snow broke the silence. He stopped several feet away from Clara. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice low but controlled. Clara tilted her head. "You didn't really think you could keep what's mine, did you?" "He's not yours," Adrian said flatly. "Oh?" Her smile widened. "Who is he then?" "Yours? A little project to ease your guilt?" Adrian said nothing. Clara's laugh was brittle. "I looked you up, you know. Adrian West, the man who lost his son and vanished from the world. How poetic. Now you find yourself another broken child to fix." The words hit harder than the wind. Adrian's breath clouded in the air between them. "Whatever you think you know about me doesn't matter. I'm not letting you near that boy again." Clara took a step closer, her eyes glinting with something sharp. "You think he'll ever love you? You think you can erase me from his head? He's mine, Mr. West. He knows it. I made sure of that." Adrian's expression hardened. "You hurt him." "I taught him," she snapped. "Life doesn't hand out mercy. I was preparing him for the world." "You were breaking him," Adrian said quietly. For the first time, her composure faltered. The smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of something raw and ugly. "You don't know what it's like to be left alone with nothing," she hissed. "That boy ate while I starved. He had his father's face. Every day it reminded me of what I lost. And now you—" She stopped, realizing how much she'd revealed. Adrian exhaled, the cold air turning his breath into mist. "You need help, Clara, but you won't get it by destroying him." Clara laughed again, a hollow sound that echoed against the gates. "Help? You think I want your pity?" She took another step forward, her boot sinking deep into the snow. "You think he's safe with you? You'll grow tired of him, just like everyone else does. You'll see, he's trouble. He's cursed." At that, Adrian's voice turned steel. "Enough." He raised a hand slightly, signaling toward the security booth near the gate. 2 guards emerged, their flashlights cutting through the dark. Clara's eyes darted to them, her confidence slipping for just a moment. "You'll regret this," she whispered. Adrian didn't answer. He simply nodded to the guards. "Escort her off the property. If she returns, call the police." As they moved forward, Clara's mask cracked. She lunged once, not toward Adrian, but toward the gate, shouting past him. "Noah, you hear me? You'll come back. You always come back." Her voice ripped through the night like a curse. Adrian turned sharply, blocking her view of the house. "That's enough!" The guards held her back, pulling her toward the road. Even as she was led away, her laughter echoed, wild, broken, and chilling. When she was finally gone, Adrian stood still for a long moment, snow settling on his shoulders. Only when he could no longer hear her voice did he turn back toward the mansion. Inside, Noah stood behind the curtain on the second-floor landing, watching everything through the window. He saw Clara being dragged away, kicking and shouting his name. He didn't cry. He didn't move. He just watched until the night swallowed her completely. Maria came to stand beside him. "She's gone, sweetheart." Noah's voice was barely a whisper. "She always comes back." Maria placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not if Mr. West has anything to say about it." Noah turned to her slowly. "Why is he helping me? He doesn't even know me." Maybe, Maria said gently, because someone once helped him when no one else did. Downstairs, Adrian re-entered the house. His coat dripped with melted snow, but his eyes were distant. Not with fear, but with memory. He glanced up at the landing, meeting Noah's gaze. For a moment, the two simply looked at each other, a silent promise passing between them. Adrian spoke first. "You all right?" Noah hesitated, then nodded. "She's gone? For now?" The boy bit his lip. She said, "I'm cursed." Adrian knelt down, his voice soft but unshakable. "You're not cursed, Noah. You're just hurt, and hurt can heal." Noah's small hand reached out, trembling. Adrian took it, the warmth of the man's grasp anchoring him. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, a sudden noise, a faint crash, like glass breaking. Adrian froze. Maria gasped. Noah's hand tightened around his. "She's inside." Adrian looked toward the dark hallway, where the sound had come from, near the back door. The storm outside had gone completely still. No wind, no movement, only silence. And in that silence, a whisper echoed from the shadows. "You can't keep him." The sound of breaking glass hung in the air like a held breath. Adrian's instincts snapped to attention, every nerve in his body sharpened by years of buried pain and training himself never to freeze when it mattered. He turned to Maria. "Take Noah upstairs. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." Maria didn't argue. She grabbed the boy's hand, whispering urgently, "Come, love." But Noah resisted, his eyes wide and terrified. "She's here, isn't she? She came back for me." Adrian crouched down, gripping the boy's shoulders gently. "Listen to me, Noah. You're safe. I promise." Noah shook his head violently. "You don't understand. She always comes back when it's quiet. She says the dark helps her find me." Adrian's expression flickered. Fear, yes, but also something deeper. Recognition. "Go upstairs," he repeated softly. "Trust me." Maria pulled Noah toward the staircase. The boy obeyed reluctantly, glancing back once, just long enough to see Adrian reach for the fireplace poker. Then they disappeared down the hall. The house fell silent again. Only the wind moaned faintly against the windows. Adrian moved cautiously toward the sound of the crash, the glass door leading to the conservatory. Shards glittered across the floor like tiny knives reflecting the firelight. He stepped inside. The room was dim, filled with the scent of soil and winter roses. The door to the garden had been forced open. Cold air rushed in, carrying flakes of snow. Adrian scanned the corners. Nothing. Then, a whisper. "Adrian." His grip tightened on the poker. "Clara," he said evenly. "This ends now." A low, bitter laugh came from the dark. "Oh, you sound just like him." He frowned. "Like who?" Her voice wavered, somewhere between rage and grief. "Like Noah's father." Adrian froze. "What do you mean?" Clara stepped into view, her face pale, her eyes wild, a streak of blood on her hand where she must have cut herself breaking the glass. "You think you're saving him?" she hissed. "But you're just finishing what his father started." Adrian stared at her, his voice barely a whisper. "Explain." She smiled, slow and cruel. "His father was your business partner, wasn't he? Daniel Quinn. You left him to drown in debt while you climbed higher. You destroyed him." The words hit like a strike to the gut. Adrian's breath caught. "Daniel. Quinn." He staggered back a step, eyes wide. "You're..." Clara's laughter was jagged. "His wife. The one you never looked back at." Adrian's heart pounded. Images rushed through his mind. A man shaking his hand, promising partnership. A deal gone wrong. A letter he never read because grief had consumed him after his own son's death. He swallowed hard. "I didn't know. Clara. I didn't know he..." He killed himself, she screamed, her voice echoing against the glass walls. And I was left with his child. Your consequences. She took a step forward, trembling with fury. So don't pretend you're his savior. You're the reason I suffered, the reason that boy suffered. You destroyed our lives and then dared to come back as his hero. Adrian's hands shook. The poker fell to the floor with a dull clang. I didn't mean for any of it to happen, he said, hoarsely. If I'd known, but you didn't want to know, she spat. You rich men never do. Her voice cracked, tears spilling down her face. Do you know what it's like to look at your child and see the man who ruined you? To feed him scraps and hate yourself for not loving him? Adrian's throat tightened. For a moment he saw not a monster, but a broken woman drowning in her own ruin. You don't have to keep hurting him, he said quietly. You can stop. Let me help you both. Clara shook her head violently. No, you don't get to fix this. You don't get redemption. Before Adrian could react, she lunged for the poker. He stepped back instinctively, the object clattering away. The two struggled briefly, snow and shards crunching underfoot. Suddenly from upstairs, Adrian! Noah's voice. The moment shattered. Clara's head whipped toward the stairs, eyes wide with obsession. Noah! She screamed. You're coming with me! Adrian moved faster. He caught her wrist before she could bolt, gripping tight but not cruelly. Enough! He barked. Let me go! She shrieked. No! He said, voice shaking. Not this time. For a second, their eyes met, his filled with guilt, hers with madness. Then Clara's strength gave out. She sank to her knees, sobbing, her hands trembling in the cold. It was supposed to be easier if he hated me, she whispered brokenly. It was supposed to hurt less. Adrian stood motionless. The truth hit harder than any blow. Clara hadn't just been cruel. She'd been trying to survive the wreckage of her own despair. He bent down slowly, taking the poker away. You need help, Clara, real help. I'll make sure you get it. She laughed weakly through her tears. Always the hero, aren't you? Adrian didn't answer. The police lights appeared outside moments later, flashing red and blue against the snow. Maria must have called them. 2 officers entered, guiding Clara gently to her feet. She didn't resist, just looked at Adrian one last time and whispered, You'll see. He's not yours to save. As they let her out, Noah appeared on the staircase, clutching the railing. Adrian? Adrian turned. The boy's small face was pale, eyes glistening with fear. Is she gone? He nodded. Yes, Noah, she's gone. But the words sounded hollow, because something inside both of them had cracked tonight. Noah ran down the steps and threw his arms around Adrian's waist. The man froze, startled by the sudden warmth. Then slowly, hesitantly, wrapped his arms around the boy. It's over, Adrian murmured, though part of him wondered if that was really true. Outside, the flashing lights faded into the night. Snow fell quietly again, covering the footprints and the shattered glass, as if the world itself wanted to forget. Yet upstairs, by the window, Maria watched silently, and saw what neither of them noticed. A single glove lying in the snow by the open gate. The one Adrian had given Noah. And next to it, another small footprint, fresh, facing toward the forest. The morning after Clara's arrest, the world was wrapped in a heavy silence. Snow blanketed the hills and fields in untouched white, hiding every trace of what had happened the night before. The house felt still, almost too still. Noah sat at the window of the guest room, his breath fogging the glass. Below, the garden stretched out toward the forest's edge, where the pines stood dark and motionless. He could still see the spot where the police car had parked, tire tracks now nearly erased by fresh snow. Yet something else caught his eye. Near the gate, faint but clear, was the outline of a single small footprint. He pressed his forehead to the glass. Mine, he wondered. He'd been carried inside last night. Adrian had made sure of that. Then whose was it? A sound behind him broke his thoughts. "Good morning," Adrian said softly from the doorway. His voice was calm, careful, the way one speaks to a frightened bird. "You didn't sleep?" Noah shook his head. "I had dreams." Adrian stepped in, setting a mug of hot chocolate on the desk. "Nightmares?" The boy hesitated. They weren't bad, just loud. Adrian frowned. "Loud?" Noah turned from the window. "Voices. They were calling my name. But not her. It was a man's voice." Adrian froze. "A man's voice?" "Yeah." Noah looked down, fiddling with his sleeves. He said, "Follow the light." Adrian's heart skipped a beat. The words struck something deep within him. Words his own son, Michael, used to say when they played hide-and-seek in the garden. "Follow the light, Dad. I'll lead you home." He forced a breath. "Maybe it was just a dream," he said softly. "Dreams can sound real sometimes." Noah nodded but didn't seem convinced. His eyes drifted back to the snow. "Do you think she's gone forever?" Adrian crouched beside him. "The police will make sure she gets help. You don't need to be afraid anymore." Noah bit his lip. "But if she wasn't bad, if she was just sad, does that make me bad too?" Adrian's chest tightened. "No, Noah. It makes you strong for surviving it." He wanted to say more, to explain how pain wasn't inherited, how it didn't pass through blood or love. But before he could, Maria's voice called from downstairs. "Sir, you might want to see this." Adrian rose, giving Noah's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Stay here, all right?" When he reached the living room, Maria was standing near the television, her face pale. The morning news played softly. "Local woman found unstable after attempted break-in. Investigation continues." The image showed Clara being led into a police van, wrapped in a blanket, her face hidden. Adrian exhaled, tension leaving his body. But Maria's voice was low, uneasy. "That's not the strange part." She picked up a manila envelope from the table. "This came early this morning. No return address, just your name." Adrian took it. The handwriting was shaky, uneven. Inside was a single photograph. Faded, old, taken at a company party long ago. Two men stood side by side in suits, Adrian West and Daniel Quinn. Between them, a child, maybe 2 years old, laughing as both men looked down at him. Adrian's throat tightened. On the back, scrawled in hurried ink, were 4 words. "You owe him everything." He sank into the armchair, the photo trembling in his hand. Maria's voice was gentle. "Who's the child?" Adrian stared at the picture. "Noah," Maria gasped. "But Daniel brought him to one of our early meetings," Adrian said quietly. "I remember now. He was proud. Said his boy would grow up strong, smarter than both of us. I didn't think much of it. Then when Daniel's company collapsed, He stopped, unable to finish. Maria frowned. "Sir, if Daniel was your partner, then that makes—" Adrian's eyes lifted, filled with dawning horror. "Noah isn't just a boy I found, Maria. He's my godson." Upstairs, Noah stood quietly at the top of the stairs, listening. He didn't mean to. The words simply floated up to him, slow and heavy. Godson. He pressed a hand to his chest. The world suddenly felt smaller, as though everything around him had been part of some invisible circle closing in. He turned toward the window again. Outside, snow drifted softly, covering the last of the footprints. But as he stared, he saw movement near the trees. A shimmer, faint and golden, like light reflecting off water. Curiosity tugged at him stronger than fear. He slipped on his boots and coat and crept quietly down the side hallway toward the back door. The garden greeted him in silence. The air was cold enough to sting his lungs. He followed the faint glimmer through the snow, past the frozen roses, toward the forest. The deeper he went, the clearer the light became. A soft glow moving between the trees, almost like a lantern floating just out of reach. Then, a voice. Gentle. Warm. Noah. He stopped, heart pounding. Who's there? No answer. Only the whisper of snow falling from branches. He took a cautious step forward. Are you my dad? The light flickered. Then came the same words he'd heard in his dream. Follow the light. The air around him felt strange, not threatening, but heavy with memory. He reached out a hand toward the glow, and the world seemed to tilt. For a moment he saw flashes. His father's face, smiling. His stepmother laughing before everything turned dark. A small boy playing by a lake as sunlight danced on the water. And beside that boy, another child, laughing with him. Noah gasped. It wasn't Clara's memory. It wasn't his. It was Adrian's. The light flared brighter, blinding him. Then, Noah! Adrian's voice, urgent, near. The glow faded instantly. Adrian burst through the trees, panting, his coat flaring behind him. He grabbed the boy by the shoulders. What are you doing out here? Noah blinked, dazed. I saw him. I saw your son. Adrian froze. What? He told me to follow the light. The words struck deep. Adrian looked into the boy's eyes, those same eyes he'd seen in the photograph. And for the first time, something unexplainable passed between them. It wasn't just guilt anymore. It was connection. Adrian pulled Noah close, holding him tightly against the cold. Let's go home, he said softly. As they walked back toward the mansion, snow began to fall harder. The footprints behind them vanished almost immediately. As if the forest itself didn't want the world to remember what it had just shown. But in the distance, faint and fleeting, a figure stood at the edge of the trees. Not Clara, not flesh, but light. Watching. The fire crackled faintly in the living room as the storm howled outside. Adrian sat in the armchair, the old photograph still in his hands, its edges soft from being held too long. Maria had gone to bed hours ago, but he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it again. That shimmer in the forest. That voice. Those words. Follow the light. He looked across the room. Noah was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket, his chest rising and falling slowly. The boy looked peaceful now, but there was something about his stillness that frightened Adrian. As if he was slipping away into a world that Adrian couldn't reach. The clock struck midnight. The wind outside howled louder, pushing against the windows like a living thing. And then, faintly, a sound. A soft humming. Adrian straightened. It wasn't the storm. It was coming from the boy. He leaned closer. Noah's lips were moving. Words, low and broken, tumbling out like echoes from another time. The lake. The light. He's waiting. Adrian's breath caught. He reached out and touched Noah's shoulder gently. Noah, wake up. The boy's eyes fluttered open, but they weren't looking at Adrian. They were unfocused, glassy, staring past him. He says you have to come, Noah whispered. Who? Adrian asked quietly. Noah blinked, his voice trembling. The man by the water. A chill crawled up Adrian's spine. Where, Noah? The lake, the boy murmured. And before Adrian could stop him, Noah sat up and started walking toward the door. The storm hadn't eased. Snow slashed sideways in the wind, erasing the path before their feet even touched it. Adrian pulled his coat tighter around Noah, shielding him as they trudged through the darkness. The path to the lake was narrow, almost invisible beneath the snowdrifts, but Noah walked with a strange certainty, as if something unseen was guiding him. Adrian followed, his heart pounding. When they reached the edge of the frozen lake, the wind suddenly stilled. The surface of the ice gleamed faintly under the moonlight, smooth and unbroken, except for one spot in the center where the snow refused to settle. There, faint and steady, was a light glowing from beneath the ice. Noah stepped forward. "That's where he is." Adrian grabbed his arm. "Noah, wait! The ice could break!" But the boy didn't stop. His eyes were full of quiet certainty. "You have to see him too." Adrian hesitated, then followed, step by step, feeling the surface creak beneath his boots. The light below grew brighter as they approached. When they reached the center, Noah knelt and pressed his hand against the ice. "He said you forgot the promise." Adrian's voice shook. "What promise?" "The one you made with his father," Noah whispered. "You said you'd protect him, no matter what." Adrian froze. Memories surged like a flood. Daniel Quinn laughing beside him, the handshake sealing their partnership, the night they drank by the lake and made a foolish, heartfelt promise. "If anything ever happens to me, you'll look after my boy." He had forgotten. No. He had buried it. The light below the ice pulsed once, then twice. Slowly, the shapes began to form. Not clear, but real enough. A man standing under the surface, looking up at him with calm, forgiving eyes. "Daniel," Adrian whispered. The glow intensified, wrapping the air in a golden haze. Noah's hair shimmered in it, his face soft, no longer fearful. Adrian fell to his knees, tears stinging his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said hoarsely. "I should have been there. I should have saved you. Saved them both." The figure below didn't speak. It only lifted a hand, as though offering peace. And then, through the silence, Adrian heard it. Michael's voice, faint but unmistakable, echoing in the wind. "It's not too late, Dad. Follow the light." The glow surged upward, bathing the lake in brilliance. Adrian felt warmth rush through him. Not the heat of fire, but of forgiveness. The snow around them swirled like gold dust. For a heartbeat, he saw them both, Daniel and Michael, standing side by side beneath the ice, smiling. Then the light faded. Adrian gasped, blinking as the storm cleared. The sky above had opened, revealing stars glimmering in the cold night. The lake was still, unbroken once more. Noah stood beside him, his small hand in Adrian's. "He said you kept your promise," the boy whispered. Adrian looked down at him, eyes shining with tears. "Did he?" Noah nodded. "He said now it's my turn to keep his." Adrian frowned softly. "What promise is that?" Noah looked up at him, a quiet strength in his gaze. "To never be afraid of love again." Adrian couldn't speak. He pulled Noah into his arms, holding him as the wind swept around them. For the first time in years, he felt peace. Real, unshakable peace. Hours later, as dawn broke, Maria found them walking back toward the house, their clothes dusted with frost, but their faces calm. "What on earth happened?" she asked, rushing forward. Adrian smiled faintly. "We went to say goodbye." Maria looked confused, but something in his eyes told her not to ask more. She simply nodded, leading them inside. The sun rose over the hills, and for the first time since winter began, light spilled through every window of the old mansion. Noah stopped by the door and looked back toward the lake. The forest was still. Yet for a brief second, he saw a faint golden glimmer between the trees, a figure waving once before fading into the light. He smiled. "Goodbye, Dad," he whispered. In the weeks that followed, the mansion slowly transformed. The broken glass was replaced, the gardens revived, laughter returned to the halls. Adrian filed for legal guardianship of Noah, not out of pity, but love. And though the past still lingered like faint mist on a cold morning, It no longer haunted him. It guided him. Because sometimes, miracles don't come with thunder or angels. They come in the quiet light that leads two lost souls home to each other. Spring arrived quietly that year. The snow melted from the hills, revealing green shoots pressing through the damp earth. The air carried a new scent, not of fear or loss, but of renewal. Adrian stood on the porch, watching Noah chase a stray kite across the garden. The boy's laughter echoed through the air, pure and bright. For the first time, it didn't sound like a ghost of what was lost. It sounded alive. He smiled. There had been so many nights when he believed peace would never return. Yet here it was, not loud or sudden, but gentle, unfolding like sunlight after a long storm. "Coffee?" Maria asked, stepping beside him with 2 mugs. He nodded, taking one. "He's changed so much." Maria followed his gaze. "He finally feels safe. That's what love does." Adrian took a sip, the warmth steadying him. "You know, for a long time I thought redemption meant undoing what I'd done wrong. But maybe it's just learning how to build something right from what's left." Maria smiled softly. "Then I'd say you've built something beautiful." Later that afternoon, Adrian and Noah sat by the lake, the same one that had once held so much pain. The ice was gone, replaced by rippling water that caught the sunlight like glass. Noah threw a small stone, watching the rings spread across the surface. "It looks different now," he said quietly. Adrian nodded. "That's what happens when winter ends. Everything gets another chance." The boy was silent for a moment. "Do you think my dad can see me?" "I do," Adrian said without hesitation. "And I think he's proud." Noah looked up at him, eyes glistening. "Even after everything?" "Especially after everything," Adrian replied. "Because you never gave up on hope." Noah smiled faintly, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn glove, the one Adrian had given him months ago. "I found this by the gate that night," he said. "I kept it because it made me feel safe." Adrian took it gently. "Then keep it always. It's a reminder that you're never alone." The wind picked up slightly, rippling through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang faintly, marking the hour. It felt symbolic, as if the world itself was acknowledging the turning of a page. That evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Adrian found Noah sitting at the piano in the study. The boy's fingers hovered uncertainly above the keys. "I used to play this with my dad," Noah said softly. "But I forgot the ending." Adrian walked over, sitting beside him. "Then let's find it together." He placed his hand on the lower keys, playing a slow, warm chord. Noah followed with a soft melody, hesitant at first, then stronger. The music filled the room, simple, tender, healing. And as the final note lingered, Noah whispered, "That sounds like home." Adrian smiled, his voice barely a whisper. "It is." Weeks turned into months. Adrian's company shifted its focus to a new foundation, one supporting children from broken homes. He named it the Quinn Light Foundation, in honor of Daniel and the promise that had changed his life. Noah often helped at the office, carrying files or greeting guests with a shy smile. Everyone adored him, not because of pity, but because he carried something rare. The quiet strength of someone who had survived darkness and chosen kindness anyway. Every night before bed, Adrian would read with him by the fire. Sometimes they read about stars, sometimes about old tales where miracles came disguised as ordinary acts of love. And on the nights when Noah still woke from dreams, trembling and uncertain, Adrian would simply hold his hand and whisper, "You're safe. I'm here." Each time, Noah's breathing would steady. Each time, the distance between them grew smaller. One evening in late summer, they returned to the lake once more. The air was warm, and fireflies danced along the water's edge. Noah held a paper lantern in his hands, its thin frame trembling in the breeze. "Ready?" Adrian asked. Noah nodded. "It's for them?" They lit the lantern together, the flame glowing softly inside. It rose slowly into the night sky, carrying with it all the words they never said. Forgiveness, love, memory. As it drifted higher, Adrian placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Do you know what I see when I look at you, Noah?" Noah looked up, curious. "I see light," Adrian said. "The kind that never goes out." The boy's eyes filled with quiet wonder. "Then I'll keep shining," he whispered. And he did. Years later, when people spoke of Adrian West, they didn't mention the business empire he'd rebuilt or the wealth he'd regained. They spoke of a man who found hope in the most unexpected place. In the eyes of a boy who once carried wood through the snow and now carried light wherever he went. They spoke of the Quinn Light Foundation, which grew into a symbol of second chances and the belief that no life was beyond repair. And every winter, when the first snow fell, Adrian and Noah would return to the lake, standing side by side in the cold. They no longer searched for ghosts or voices. They just watched the light shimmer on the water. A reminder that love, once found, can never truly fade. Because some promises don't end with the people who made them. They live on, in those who choose to keep them.